Good morning, and it's Saturday, and you really, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, here is Dr. B again, trying to make your life simpler, quite frankly, in terms of your getting this your project together properly. I was quietly and cautiously pleased about the meeting we had the other day. In terms of a quick debrief, I could see that the lights were beginning to go on in terms of not only your creativity, but also in terms of your seeing how some of these approaches change your thinking. And I mean, changing your thinking, which therefore changes your leadership DNA to recognize how you can empower other people to think along the same lines. I just did a podcast last night with a professor. I think he was a professor from Costa Rica, where he was talking to me about my book and some other things. And it's kind of cool to see how when people begin to see some of the nuances of what I'm driving at, uh, become very engaged with it. Enough said, that was myself patting myself on the back. I had the sense also the other day as I was rushing you through the last 10 or 15 minutes of the meeting that you were beginning to see how some of these forecasting strategies need more elaboration. So I'm going to take some time this morning to repeat some of those things and probably get a little deeper and then add in a new forecasting skill, which I call a three-dimensional forecasting skill. And I didn't invent it. I got this from an author named I forgot his first name, Kahane, Kahane. I'll think of his first name before we're finished, about scenario planning, which is truly a deeper approach to how forecasting futures should be, actually, rather than the two-dimensional ones, which I've already demonstrated, but I am going to demonstrate again to show you how things march through. I also want to reiterate, I know I said this about a million times, uh, and it won't be the last time, I'm sure, too. I want to reiterate the the information gathering strategies. Before you proceed even into these other skill sets, make sure that you have clearly drilled down on some of these root cause issues through 5Y, through the SWOT, through data analysis, if that works for you. So you have a handle on what it's about. You can't change something that you don't understand. It's as clear as that. And neither can a group. If you're using a group up the road as an actual administrator, they need to understand all the nuances, not just one side of the Rubik's Cube, but all six sides, as best you can possibly do that. And that's why I keep saying that. And you really can't go forward. So, sort of like Bloom's taxonomy, although I don't always agree with Bloom's taxonomy, that you begin with the knowledge base. I'm not so sure all the time about that, but clearly it's a piece that most teachers and administrators embrace. And so what I'm going to do is, and it'll take a little while because I just opened this up. I'm going to share. No, I'm not going to share the screen yet because what I need to do is to find what I showed you the other day. I think I can find that pretty quickly, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm going to try to upload this to your module. I don't know if I can by way of copyright, so you just have to bear with me on that. And I'm not sure if I used this phraseology with you before, but I will now. And that would be, first, let me find what I'm looking for. When I teach these things, when I run workshops, I always walk through three steps, and I could probably walk through a lot more, but generally speaking, that's about as far as I think I can take it without having people wanting to run out the door because I make their hair hurt. And that would be the information gathering strategies, which I have emphasized many times to you, not just 2 minutes ago, and also what I call two-dimensional and three-dimensional futuring. There are any number of approaches to this. I'm just teaching you uh, two for uh, two-dimensional and one for three-dimensional. Simulation would be another three-dimensional approach, uh, but it's too complicated to get into here in this forum. At any rate, here's the two-dimensional one which we started to do the other day. And so I'm not going to state this except to uh, emphasize that you need to do a futures wheel before you do a cross-impact matrix, before you do a scenario. Because what you're doing is you're changing your thinking, engaging both sides of the brain, I suppose, if I were doing some research on this specifically to stretch out how you see things differently. And I saw that happening the other day. And again, and that was a rush job because of the time element. So let's do a little bit more of it. And again, this is straight out of the book. If I know it sounds like a commercial. If you buy the book, then you can have access to these that way, which makes me think I shouldn't put them on a copyright. But you can see them on the video as a demonstration. So what you would do is you would I put it in the wrong place. I just realized that. Wow, that was a boo-boo. That belongs in here. And it won't work. Hey, this is the way life is sometimes. I can't get this to open. So watch this little cursor and see what we're doing. I think you get it. You put the issue or no, that's right. I'm in the right place. Excuse me. You put um, the future in the center. Should have been here. All right. No, I'm sorry. Should have been here. No, what's wrong with me today? Don't get old. You put the issue of a change that you're trying to emphasize in the center. And then with that, you look for the ripple effects. Now, the metaphor I always use, and it's not anything particularly uh, profound, is you throw a rock into a puddle or into a pond, we get ripples. And then from that, you get the word, if you think about the idea of ripple effect, then you project out what you think the ripple effects would be. I mean, all you're doing is reading the last 2 or 3 days since the election is all the ripple effects people are anticipating. And they're looking at this, for the most part, from the two-dimensional issue. They're not really looking at it more deeply, I don't think. What they're doing is they're identifying the ripple effects of the results of the election. And if you think about a rock tossed into a puddle or into a pond, the ripples go all the way out to the edges of the pond, to the edges of the puddle, and touches the surfaces all around that puddle as well. Affects the insects, affects the fish, affects the quality of the water. All those premises begin to cross with each other. So to come back to one we used the other day, since for some reason I can't write on this one. You put the future, you're considering, all right, as a change issue, and you're putting that in the center of a wheel that looks something like this, and then you're projecting out. Now, unfortunately, we can't go too far because it won't let me. Maybe we'll hear. Okay, we'll hear. So let's go down here. So we have limited instruction. What's another consequence of that? I'm thinking out loud with you. We have limited instruction. We have dissatisfaction from results. I might even have belonged more nearly up here if you think about it. And I ripple this out. I can take this out if I had a big 6 foot by 6 foot sheet. And again, on a piece of poster board, for example, poster paper, you can really see all kinds of consequences emerging. For the most part, they're two-dimensional. They're if-thens. If this happens, then that happens. If that happens, then this happens. And it just ripples all the way out. Now what you do is, I'm shouting for emphasis, is you try to identify what you think will most probably happen? Hear me on this. What will most probably happen? Based on your information gathering strategies, you have a feel for this. You may not be correct, but you certainly have the right at this point to narrow the possible futures down to into the funnel to probable. So usually what I say to a group is, and you could do this with any group you're running, is have them put a little star or a check, some way to designate what they think are the 3 or 4 most probable futures. Now notice on this future wheel, it's a little out of whack, that often people will think the most probable futures are the ones in the inner circle of where the rock fell. Not always. So don't get limited by that. And you're going to fill this chart or more. The more you fill, the better off you are without confusing yourself or confusing your group. Then what I also do sometimes, depending on where I'm taking the group, or where you would take your group, I would have them put a little heart or a little star in what they think are the preferable futures. So from the probables, have them identify a couple of preferables. Now the preferables are pretty much based on the how you read that group, what their preferable futures are. Now, if you pick a preferable future that's not a probable, then there's something wrong. And go back and review that. So again, think of the funnel coming down. And when you finish with this, you're going to have a chart. You can do this by yourself. Or you can do it with a group. It's more fun to do with a group. Uh, oh, before I forget, these have to be substantiated. They are not, he shouted, brainstorms. If someone says, well, the Martians are going to land, that's a possible future, but that ain't a probable future. The probable futures have been a consequence or a result of or generated from the information strategies that you've done your homework on, or will have done your homework on in an actual changing process. And so if someone says, well, the Martians are going to land, or we're going to have, this, that, and the other thing, well, then you have to say, show me how you feel that way. Let's try to understand where you're coming from. And because, let me just back up a second. In a brainstorm, anything you say is okay. Again, this is not a brainstorm. This is a if-then cause and effect chart. And they have to be based and grounded in research, data, logic, hopefully all three. Okay, so now I have a futures wheel that's where you've designated, or your group has designated a group of probable futures. And then what we do is we roll down and take those probable futures and you plug them into a cross-impact matrix. Now, matrix is a big fancy word, but it's a chart. It's a grid, whatever you wanted to call it. And what I do with this is I'm going to put what I think my probable futures are. So at the end of our Thursday session, we had come up with a limited time. I'm going to add another one just to think. I might have the opposite of limit. I might say that additional support help is hired to assist teachers to use new strategies. Sounds like that's what Melissa was. Sounded like that was her job. So someone said, let's pay a Melissa to help these teachers use new strategies that they may not be familiar with to teach E and L kids. Melissa, I remember the N rather than the S. And then we go back across here, and we say, okay, now what I only did the other day was I asked for one thing. Now you can't see it very well, but basically I said, so how would limited time affect teachers? And I think it says leaders become stressed and I don't know if I even finished that one. So now if I were to go back to additional support for teachers, I think it's kind of clear, a probable future that emerges from that other probable future that it's specific to one group might say something like, uh, teachers change their strategies. Now, who is the Gen? I don't know who Gen is. Or general ed. And general education kids, these students will also benefit, but I can also think of a negative to this. These students grow too. I might put another one in there and say, well, these students grow too, but uh, these students might be, I'm going to use a strong verb. I don't think this is a probable future, but I want to just press the button here a little bit more. Might be ignored because we're throwing a lot of our energy, teaching energy now towards the E and L babies. I go across this matrix and I say, all right, well, look at this. Now we have E and L students as well, and we're going to say these students evidence growth. Leaders have to sustain the expenditure with data that shows the growth. And they were going to have to probably realign resources to do this. Resources means time, resources means money. I was talking to one of my granddaughters the other day, and she's in all the different theater productions in school. And I don't know, I forgot how we began to talk about this. And short story was that I was saying something about how there's only so much money in the pizza pie, and it has to be sliced. It doesn't necessarily have to be sliced in eight equal slices. And she got immediately caught on to that. She says, "Yeah, the grandpa, because the football team gets new equipment every year, but we're in the drama productions, and we have to repaint everything that we do." Well, what that tells me is that the resource allocation to athletics, especially in this district, is uh, hefty. Uh, it comes at the expense of the drama kids. Value issue. Now you can see what we're doing now is we're getting more, to come back up to the futures wheel, we're getting deeper. But we're still in two-dimensional. We're getting deeper. Now it's going to happen naturally. And we only did these two things for the sake of time today. What's going to happen naturally is that these probable futures are going to start sorting themselves out a little bit. Some are going to seem be of more interest, deeper interest than others. Some will fall by the wayside. Sometimes new ones evolve. Let that happen. That's great if you can do that. Let it happen. Allow it to happen. Encourage it to happen. But in the end, what you're going to do is you're going to see a different level of thinking than you will have seen earlier. That's a money back promise. I'm going to add a proviso to that by also saying what's going to happen as well, from my experiences, is that not only will it be a deeper level of thinking, it doesn't mean, put it that way, that some of these ideas would not have emerged just for the plain old conversation. I don't want to mislead you on that. However, this time it's going to be more systematically developed. And I think I said to somebody in the class, it might have been Melissa again, it was my teacher's pet that night. Uh, and if you're a language arts teacher, remember this too. If you use the same approach with Goldilocks and the Three Bears, or with any predictive skill set in teaching literature or in science, I'm not so sure about math, but certainly science, you're going to get some heavy duty thinking here, and you'll get some wonderful essays. If you're signing an essay or a conversation, you're going to get some really great things. So now depending on the seriousness, gravity of the issue that you were examining, and all of the ones I've seen from you are pretty deep, thankfully. Now what you need to do, you could stop at these two strategies. You've done the information gathering. That's I'm going to call that a third set. Now you've done two-dimensional with features wheels and with cross-impact matrices, and you've got some nice energy and the pot's boiling. But if you want to take it to the next place, you've got to take it to the third dimension. All right. Now this looks, and it is, quite frankly, I'm only giving you the surface on this, more complex, and it is. And what we're talking about now, and again, Adam Kahane, Kahane. I remember the name, the title of the name of the author from whom I learned this, um, is develop scenarios. A scenario is a story. And the story is, generally speaking, based on um, the if-thens coming together and boiling each other all up between the cross-impact matrices and the fuses wheel, and you've got a pretty good idea where things may be heading. This constricts a little differently. Now, I'm going to go slowly here, and I'm going to move this. You need to read this, and I don't want to read it at you. But what we're going to do now is use a process that separate. I mean, this is the sex that's common. I apologize. Separates the men from the boys. I apologize. So I'm just using an old phrase. Now, take a look at this little thing, this little guy here. It should be bigger, but the publisher made it too small, I think. Now look at I have four quadrants here because I have two arrows. And the arrows go left to right and right to left, and the arrows go up and down and up. And in doing that, what we've done is we've created four conditions. All right, here we now watch my little arrow. First of all, let's take the north and south one. This is one idea premise that the people who were involved with this, considering these changes and consequences, care about their future. They want to see what's going to happen. And you're running all the way down to that they don't care. There are plenty of people who will say that doesn't affect me. I'm not worried about changing, worrying about global region scores. I'm not worried about it. It's not on me. And so we go from carrying high to carrying low. Now, I could put any number of things in any of these axes, but in this case, I put down carrying high to carrying low. And then from the left to right, the horizontal axis, I think that's called the x-axis, um, takes a different spin on it. And now we're talking about capacity to change. Do they have the skill set? Do they know how to change? You don't know how to change, so you got your thumbs in this pie over the past several weeks. Maybe you did, but now you're learning it on a more formal basis. And now we're taking a look at uh, whether they have the capacity to. That means they have the skill sets and the will. No, I take that out. They have the skill sets, perhaps the resources as well. And so they have a high capacity to change. They know what they have to do. They recognize how implementation takes place from a pilot all the way across, as we've spoken about umpteen times. To the other side, I mean, there are plenty of districts and schools where I have done things where they didn't have the capacity to change. They've never been trained in any of this, didn't necessarily see the need for it. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, kind of thinking. And so you go to low capacity to change. Now, I've got these four quadrants now. I'm going to talk slowly because I get mixed up sometimes on this. Here we go. So there's a quadrant. We're going to call this quadrant 2. We're going to go clockwise, where we have a potential scenario where you have a group of community or stakeholders who care about their future and know how to do it. Going around the clock here, going to quadrant 3, you're going to have, this is the interesting ones, I think. You're going to go to a place where a set of people could say, yeah, they know how to change, but they don't care. They know how to do it, but it's an academic exercise to them, and they're not interested in investing. Don't really care about it. So here's high, 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 low. Going around the other side, going up the clock, so to speak, is what I call quadrant four, which sounds like ultimate bleakness, but not always. Where there's not only is a low capacity to change, don't know how to change, they don't care. They're just going to accept what it is and let and perpetuate the mediocrity. They're fine with that, and wouldn't know how to do it even if they wanted to. And let's go up to the last one. That would be quadrant one. I probably should have started with that one, and that would have been they do care. They want to do something about it, but they don't know how. Now, in a perfect world, what you would do, and this is where the fun begins, you'd put all of your participants into one of four groups. Just shuffle them out. All right. If you know that they're futurists and collaborative leaders and so forth, try to spread those around. But if you don't know, it's okay too. Just shuffle the cards and put all your participants in one of four groups and give them that quadrant. So we'll make it hard on ourselves for a minute. Let's say uh, Melissa and Jen W. and Marilyn and Tim are put into a group that's got no capacity to change and doesn't care. All right, so I'm going to work with you folks for a minute. And then I'm saying to that group, what you need to do is to create a story. Tell me a story that circles its wagons around that premise, that theme. Low, low. What would it look like? Now, what every group's going to do, and this becomes fun, but it's also time consuming. It's not as though you snap your fingers and do this. Give them choices to present their story. This is a limited list. There's plenty of other ones we could use as well. They could do a newscast that represents the events or trends that emerge from low, low. If they had the time, they could create a website. That's the one I like, but it's a time-consuming one. They could create a website for others to see, with links about, the school fell apart yesterday and nobody came to school and nobody even took the Regents this week because nobody cared. And the teachers didn't know how to get the kids to come. I'm making this up as they go along. The website has, those of you who are good at developing websites, and I'm learning how to do that, can create documents, videos, resources. You could have a lot of fun with that if you had the time. This is the hard one. And it's an but all of these are actual futurist techniques. This is called a backward history. I guess the best way to give you a quick description of that choice would be project out into the future. It could be, I'm thinking of the Terminator for some reason, but I'm sure there's lots of other ones we could work with there. Project out into the future and tell us what your community would look like 10 years from now. And since it looks, and if it's still characterized by low, low, by the way, it doesn't have to be. It can evolve, it could change according to how your creativity works. You're going to take that reality from 10 years from now, let's argument's sake, no more than 10 years, and you're going to work backwards and show how from 2020, this is 24, I'll be almost 25, how it generated from 24, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and then upwards, work backwards and show how the events ultimately led to whatever the condition would be. Now, as a model for this one, I would say that people would be so disgusted in the beginning in 24, 25, people would be moving out. Schools would change or close and it become pretty bad. And then what's going to happen is people will move in, snap up the cheaper property values and ratchet it up. where maybe 10 years from now, it's a place with high capacity to change, and with the community that now really insists their kids do well all the way. So let's train the kids how to, the people, the stakeholders, how to make these changes take effect. In the end, and I'm knowing, forgive me for rushing this. In the end, which, and I would love to have done this with you this past Thursday, but we got twisted and turned by lots of other premises. Were I to have another full 2 hours with you, we would be doing this. But nonetheless, uh, and I'll be doing that in that workshop I was offering to you the other day. Were we to have the time, you would be presenting these things, and then you would present, each group would present to the other groups. After the presentations are done, uh, we'll take a vote. And the vote will be, I'm not sure if it's in no, it's not. And the vote would be whether it's a realistic scenario, whether it's plausible, and whether it's clear, and if it's creative or not. And a scenario will be selected of the four. Now, here's a hint: don't go less than four, don't go more than four. Four is a perfect number on this. If you go less than four, then it becomes way too narrow. If you go more than four, it becomes too complicated. And from that, you're going to have a scenario that everyone thinks, are you ready? This is important, is the most probable. Let me let that marinate for a bit. And I'm not doing a video about this one. Uh, Actually, I'm not doing a video about this part. And that would be, all right, now we have this probable future. Let's say that low wins. Here's the next question. See my other hand. And that would be, do you prefer that one? Is that the preferable future that you think the community and the district will accept? If there's a gap between the most probable and the most preferable, you can see my little bald head here between my two hands, then we got to make decisions. The community would have to make decisions. The board and the district would have to make decisions as to whether or to what extent we want to make the probable, change the probable to what we want to be most preferable. If it's most preferable, then we're good. Very rarely happens in truth. But it, in the end, brings us around to my sister-in-law is calling. Wait for my wife to get that. Okay. I'm going to close the door because they're going to talk about the election. I don't want to hear that. Close the door, please. Tell her we're in a total black hole. Now, here's the last two words I'm going to use with you today, and that would be, now the group has to decide, the whole group, or the W has to decide whether they want to adapt to the future or whether they want to transform. I'm going to take the extreme for a moment and say if they want to transform, they want to take a grenade, throw it in the middle of this probable future and blow it up. It's a different kind of action plan than an action plan that adapts. I'm thinking out loud when I say to you that I think I'm probably pressing an adaptive approach in your plans. That's not really necessarily true, though. I'm not going to give you a zero if you go adapt and don't go transform, or if you go transform and don't go adapt, because there's variations in the spectrum on this, obviously. But if I were you, it's more fun. Okay, this I promise you, it's more fun to go transform. play with that a little bit. Try to think from the transformative way. I don't know if I've used this definition with you before. By the way, I don't like the transform word, although I use it more often than I should. Uh, Everybody uses that term in leadership, I'd imagine. I think alchemy is a better word. Most of you know what an alchemist was. They were pseudo scientists back in the Middle Ages who were trying to take base substances and turn them into gold. You know, the phrase you might often hear is lead into gold. There's plenty of lead around, so the alchemists try all kinds of combinations chemically to transform the lead into gold, and obviously they failed. But in doing that, they also created science and the scientific method. So that was a good thing. But in the beginning, all they were doing was just mixing different things together and playing in a certain sense. So, but I won't even use the word alchemy as a synonym for transformation. I think a better way to put it, at least for me, this is a personal discovery for me, would be when you transform self-transformation, which is this what you're talking about, self-individual, but then group transformation to engage in collective actions to recreate your school district according to the needs you identify is really when people come up with new ways to realize. I'm probably going onto thin ice when I say what I'm about to say. This is self-serving. I know it's self-serving, and I apologize in advance for it. But I don't know how many courses you have taken in leadership, right? In leadership, it's my prayer that you've been transformed in each course that you've taken, including mine. Uh, and by transformed, I mean that you've come up with new ways to realize. Quite frankly, it's pretty hard not to have new ways to realize if you come through an entire program of leadership training, I think. But that's not certainly limited to leadership training. It can be most any efforts you take to make to engage something new and to make it part of who you are. Whether you're learning how to dig a hole or whether you're learning how to transform, here we go, recreate a district to get them to think differently. And I may have said this to you when I did this podcast last night. The fellow was from Switzerland, but then was now living in Costa Rica, and he was a pretty interesting dude on his own. Uh, and his worldview was much broader and deeper than mine, I have to say, and because of his experiences. And he really kind of pressed home the point in our conversation that where he said, uh, there are new things happening all the time we don't even know about or are only faintly aware about from the technological point of view, if nothing else, or even medically. I mean, uh, there are treatments, for example, for various ailments and death-threatening diseases that didn't exist 10 years ago. I mean, an obvious example, I said this to my wife the other day. What movie? I was watching The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix, which is really good. And if you watch The Lincoln Lawyer, the Lincoln Lawyer walks around with a cell phone attached to him at 24/7, and is constantly using the phone to pull up information and to communicate with people as he needs to. I mean, come on, it was so clear to me. I think you all realize it, but don't express it. How in this case, the technological slash sociological changes that have become evidenced by widespread use of smartphones. I'm not going to just say iPhones. Is incalculable in certain senses. I mean, the ripple effects continue. And then then if you go over to the artificial intelligence premise, which is technological, but deeper than that. So our moral obligation to, as leaders, to recognize how we need to leverage those things within our efforts to change what we do. And I'm going to stop there. I'm pretty happy with that last statement. And I'm going to post this video today. And since you're watching it, then you're watching it. But I also put up a little quick email to say this is out. I urge you to watch this carefully because it's going to shape that column and it's going to shape your strategies if you internalize it. And if I had a magic wand, I would sprinkle pixie dust on all of you and say, I hope that you apply some of these things to your own practices today, and certainly when you have the L on your shoulder for leader. Take care.